This is an open letter to Professor George Magoha, Cabinet Secretary, Education. I choose to voice this letter because if I wrote a letter in the normal way, it will get lost in the bureaucracy. But I must from the onset state, since Professor George Magoha is my boss, I do everything today in the most respectful manner. I petition the minister in matters of selection of books for our schools. Every time we have books being selected, issues are raised. Issues are raised in terms of how the evaluation was done, how the awards were made, about the quality of the books we end up with. The cabinet minister will be aware that from the time we began pushing the book into the arena of money, because previously books were produced by government institutions, KIE then, currently KICD, Jomo Kenyatta Foundation, and Kenya Literature Bureau. Publishers complained and they got involved in the productions of books, with the KICD playing the role of just supervising and vetting. It has gone on well. It's good to involve other players, but where money is involved, there are issues. It has gotten worse now that the government is actually purchasing the books, not approving for schools to purchase, but the government is doing direct purchase, and the game is getting uglier and uglier. The recent evaluation and award, if there are anything to go by, I appeal to you, Professor Magoha. I know people don't know you. People say you are arrogant, you are rude. Some people say you are even mad. They don't know you. We know you. You are my vice chancellor for many years. You are a person who goes for perfection, nothing but the best. I am appealing to that aspect of you. You are a surgeon, a scientist, and you know the meaning of precision. You know when you're operating, you must be precise. You know as a scientist, you cannot take a plane in the skies with a large enough error of margin of error to bring it down. School books are so critical, Bwana Minister, that if we do not take care, if we continue giving children poison books, we run the danger of finding ourselves doing what the late Professor Odhiambo said of Isipe, that this country will get at a point where they will need to re-educate everybody. Books are critical, yet the selection process by KICD, if it is really bad. I want to focus on one. They were picking set books, and there's always been issues with set books, including teachers complaining in the recent past that the books selected, you can't even test it for a year. You set exam this year, and the following year there's nothing to teach. There's nothing to set. The same thing is now almost being repeated. But I'm isolating one thing. There was an award given, or intent to award, to 6 publishers for 6 set books. They have now withdrawn one of those books they had given. An error of 1 out of 6. Professor Magoha, you are a surgeon. Can you take that error? It means the process was not good. If you look at the evaluation, and I don't want to go into the detail, the evaluation leaves a lot to be desired. First, instead of concentrating on the substance, they look at the book and they concentrate on non-issues, so that those books which have been selected, when they go now for what they call changes, working on the changes, they are books that need a whole week to be reworked on, to be changed. Yet a book was not selected with changes that could be effected in 20 minutes. How would you concentrate on spelling and typos and 1 or 2 small grammatical mistakes at the expense of the substance? That aside, the main complaint this year is that you introduced the tendering. Professor Magoha, my boss. How can you introduce tenderpreneurs in the business of school? This is not roads we are constructing. We are constructing minds. You cannot sacrifice a good book merely because the competitor to that book quoted a low price. Now, talking of prices, Mr. Minister, I invite you to look at some of the prices. Books quoted as low as 45 shillings. Imagine a book, intellectual property, going for less than the price of maize, the price of milk. A book being cheaper than a loaf of bread. A book being cheaper than a newspaper. They are playing games with these prices, knowing very well they are allowed a 10% margin of change, but in the subsequent 4 years when this book will still be a set book, they will now go behind and get approval to increase the prices. Secondly, the prices are low, and they know they cannot print those books here. Yet, the bid document says, buy Kenyan, build Kenyan. So now, somebody is given 800,000, an order of 800,000 books to supply to the government of that book. He will print 50,000 in Nairobi. He will get the remaining 750,000 offshore. He has beaten the intention of the government to build Kenyan, to create jobs. Because they are not foolish people. You can't print at that price in this country. Secondly, Mr. Minister, all the publishers who have been awarded these books are now telling the authors they should accept to be paid much, much less. In fact, less than half of the royalties. Normal royalties in this country is at 10%. Buyers of books do not know when you buy a book at 500 shillings, the author, the person who wrote that book, gets only 50 shillings. And now, because of this conmanship in bidding, they are telling the authors. I know of a young man who has been told he should accept 2 shillings per copy of his book. I know of a friend who has been forced to accept 4.5% instead of 10%. Look at where we are driving ourselves. But should we really allow prices? Should we sacrifice content as substance on the altar of prices? Let me explain why I think that is wrong. We know the average cost of producing a novel in this country. We know the average price. The average price of a novel in this country, you can go in the bookshop, is 500 shillings. Give or take 50 or thereabout. The average price of a play produced in this country is about 300 shillings, give or take. Why can't the government simply say, with that information in mind, give us 50% discount, so that we are going to buy novels with 250 shillings. You bid knowing it is 250. It is fair for everybody. The writer, the author, the publisher, and the government. The publisher will have no problem with 250 because if he was selling the book on the open market, he wouldn't sell 800,000 copies. He wouldn't produce the book at the printing level with the cost of producing 800,000. The runs determine the price. The publisher is okay because the bookshops take 30 to 40% discount in order to sell their book. This time there's no bookshop. The government is buying. The publishers also know there is marketing. There are salespeople in the field. There is storage. There are many things which they would not incur this time. So they are willing to give the government these books at even 200 shillings. But you are forcing them in the competition to go down to 40 shillings and then with attendant issues. Let me now finally finish with what I think the minister must do. Minister must cancel this process and start afresh with a clean team, not the guys at ICD. Bring the stakeholders, the publishers, bring experts to a meeting. Let us find out how we can process books for our children. Mr. Minister, you'll have to address this issue because if we continue in this manner, there is so much I would say that I don't have time to say. So much that is not even fair for me to say in public. But if you call a meeting, we will tell you things. Cancel this process. Let me finish by saying this. Kenyans, share this video until it reaches the minister. Students should reach their parents. Parents should reach their MCA, their MP, their senators, their governors. Share this video until it reaches the president. Because we cannot sacrifice. Every time there are selections of books, there are issues. And these issues, this is the time to address them. The minister must step in this game. Because these are actual games. These are games of smart fellows. Knowing that a set book means a lot of money. They have been playing games over the years. I have my own experience. I have my own report here with me. Because I also submitted a book. If you read the report, it's so wonderful until the end. And the recommendation is what I'll read only. My recommendation reads like this, the conclusion of my report over my book. The literate text meets the threshold in terms of content, form, editorial, and it promotes positive values and attitudes. We recommend this literate text for secondary school learners. All the books that were to be recommended met the shortlist. Why didn't this book meet the shortlist? Why was it given 54 marks out of 80? I suspect the person who doctored the marks forgot to change the recommendation, the conclusion. I asked the KICD. They could not provide a good answer. Professor Magoha, our minister, our boss, stop this process. Appoint a small committee of serious people. Let them just look at the reports. Let them look at how the evaluation was done, how marks were awarded, how books were then awarded finally. And they will not even need an hour to come back to you and tell you this process is rotten. This process stinks, and the stench is being directed to our children. We will be giving our children poison if we give them these books.